guys, welcome back. We're gonna pick up where we left off, talking about the Gloomspite Gitz. And the Bad Moon. The Bad Moon is a malevolent planetoid formed from the strange substance known as Loonstone. Upon its pocked surface it bears a leering visage whose eyes are vast as oceans, whose fangs are mountain ranges, and whose twisted features shift impossibly with every waxing and waning. It is considered a dread omen to all but the grots. Some grot shamans tell how, long ago in the Age of Myth, Gorkamorka saw a particularly vast moon drifting through the void and decided to take a great big bite out of it. In this tale it is said that Gorkamorka scaled the highest mountaintop and waited until the moon passed by, at which point he sunk his huge tusks into it, or rather, he tried to. The moon proved so tough that Gorkamorka's fangs barely pierced its surface before several of them broke off, and the great green god recoiled with a roar of pain. The shamans tell how the tusk-scarred rock was infected with Gorkamorka's power and became the Bad Moon, a mighty celestial aspect of the god of destruction. They are also quick to point out that this is the origin of the Moon Clan tribal tradition that no grot is permitted to try to eat the moon. There are other stories of the Bad Moon's origins. One of these recounts how Gorkamorka plunged into a lake to devour the moon's reflection, and how the violent waves smashed his visage together with that of its true counterpart above. Others claim that Gorkamorka first came to the mortal realms aboard a huge warship that has since become the Bad Moon, or that the Bad Moon is actually the manifestation of the collective spirits of every grot shaman to have ever lived. The Spider-Fang grots instead worship the great spider god, an arachnid god-beast said to have bitten Gorkamorka's foot and been infused with his divine power. To them, the Bad Moon is in fact the spider god's immense silken egg sac, which will one day hatch to spill a never-ending swarm of spiders across the realms. Whether one or indeed any of these tales is true ultimately matters little. All Moon Clan grots believe in their particular version of the myth, with sufficient vehemence as to be moved to all manner of rabid violence in the Bad Moon's name. And the strange phenomenon known as the Gloomspite, which summons the troglodytic green hordes to the surface, is undeniable. Unlike a typical lunar body, the Bad Moon changes both its course and its position seemingly at random. Sometimes it becomes occluded until it is little more than a sliver of sickly yellow light. At others it swells gibbous and vast, a bloated monstrosity that swallows up the sky. Its leering face shifts from one aspect to another, though never when watched. It is only when one blinks, looks away for an instant, or else a cloud passes before it that the moon's expression undergoes a sinister change. The greenskins say that these different faces of the moon represent the different sides of Gorkamorka, at one moment leering with cunning or spite, the next scowling with bestial anger. The Bad Moon possesses its own strange satellite, a hurtling lump of misshapen rock that runs mad rings around it at a breakneck pace. Some grots believe this to be the bad moon's excitable pet squig. Others say it is Gorkamorka's mace, or perhaps his fist, always swinging wildly to smash other celestial bodies out of the way. Others claim that the bad moon itself is Gork's head, and the satellite Mork's, or perhaps vice versa. The nose-biter hordes of the Pointy Claws mountain range maintain that this smaller object is the spirit of an ancient Moon Clan chieftain who conquered 8 great mountain peaks, and so was blessed to accompany Gorkamorka's rampage through the skies for all time. Heralds of the Everdank. None can predict the random wanderings of the bad moon. It whirls through the cosmos like a punch-drunk Moon Clan fanatic, barging aside other celestial bodies and throwing prophecies and auguries into disarray. Wherever the bad moon fills the skies, it blocks out not just light, but hope and even rational thought. Those non-greenskins bathed in the bad moon's cloying radiance may be driven mad, spouting nonsense rhymes or babbling in weird, dead languages. Others burst into sudden hideous growth as looncap fungi erupt from their bodies with painful, often fatal, results. By comparison, the Gloomspite hordes are energized and emboldened by the unnatural eclipse. Freed from the cruel gaze of glare-face Frazzlegit, they engage in orgies of destruction that see entire nations swallowed up by ruin. Like insects swarming from beneath a rotten log, the grots and Troggoths scuttle from every crack and crevice to wreak havoc. Yet their assaults are not purely for violence's sake, like those engaged in by the Ironjaw war clans. Instead, every great Gloomspite leader has had the same goal, of being the great and cunning visionary backstabber who ushers in the Everdank. It is said that the bad moon recognizes and rewards those grot leaders with enough vision to foresee its erratic course and offer up sacrifices as it thunders overhead. Many loon bosses and web spinner shamans have claimed to feel the clammy hand upon them, meaning they possess the bad moon's manifest blessings. Few have been able to say so truthfully, but there is one abroad in this bloody age who is genuinely loon-touched. Known as Scraggot, the self-proclaimed Loon King, this devious Git has become the bad moon's most powerful champion by capitalizing upon the portents of the time of tribulations in an ingeniously horrible fashion. And you will remember we discussed what that fashion is in the last video when we talked about Scraggot's Asylum. Danksome destruction. Many who follow the gods of order, death, or chaos seek, in one way or another, to conquer the realms and impose their own vision upon them. Not so the worshippers of Gorkamorka. Within them lives the instinctive drive to maintain the natural, primal nature of things by tearing down all the great works their enemies raise. The forces of destruction predominantly comprise the various greenskins and ogre subspecies. Each of these has their own distinctive cultures and quirks, from the savage bone splitters and the frost-wreathed beast-claw raiders, to the heavily armored and spectacularly brutal iron jaws. Regardless Regardless of how much they differ, however, all the tribes of Gorkamorka have one thing in common. On a fundamental level, they are driven to seek out and destroy the bastions of civilization. Isolated hamlets and roaming cog forts, sprawling fortresses and cloud-piercing temples, the forces of destruction are compelled to hurl them all down and butcher their occupants until the realmscape is returned to its natural primitive state. The fact that most types of greenskin and ogre derive a great deal of enjoyment from wreaking such wanton havoc is, for them, simply a fortunate byproduct of their belligerent attitude to life. Of course, each tribe or clan has their own outlook upon what the natural order of things should look like. The nomadic Ironjaws, for example, hail originally from the broad savannas and shattered stony plains of the realm of beasts, where everything is predatory in some fashion and the landscape is wild and rugged. So it is that Ironjaws see any artificial structure or purposeful construction as a thing to be torn down and scattered until no two stones sit atop one another. The ogres of the Beastclaw Raiders, meanwhile, trail the biting cold and desolate snows of the Everwinter wherever they go. By their very presence, they reduce even the most verdant of civilized kingdoms to icy wastelands, where survival relies upon sheer resilience and a savage hunter's instinct. Though they might not seek to topple buildings in the way Ironjaws would, they will instead reduce them to frost-bitten ruins, fit only to serve as lairs for hardy predatory monsters. To the disparate beings that make up the Gloomspite hordes, normality is darkness, moisture, and shade. They hail from subterranean depths, where water drips from dangling stalactites into still black pools, where luminescent fungi sprout from sweating stone, and insects scuttle amidst forlorn piles of gnawed bones, where rotting bogs fester beneath dense forest canopies, and many-legged things lurk in web-strung thickets, where stagnant slime collects in shadowy ravines and collapsing ruins subside beneath masses of thornbriar and muckroot. There dwell the Gloomspite Gitz. To the grots and troggoths that make up these cave-dwelling multitudes, it feels as though the natural order of the mortal realms is a state of cool shadowiness and fungus-thick damp. They hate and fear the boogeymen of the realm's stars and suns. Some Moon Clan shamans even conflating Sigmar in the celestial realm with Glareface Frazzlegit, and venting their hatred upon any who give the appearance of worshipping him. To the Gloomspite hordes, the realms will only be returned to their proper state when the bad moon waxes fat on high, and all the lands lie draped in pale shadow beneath it like one huge cavern. They seek to keep the caves dark and secluded, filled with cloying drifts of shadow and the skittering of nameless things. They want the forests to sprawl wide and vast, tangling and decaying way down beneath twisted boughs, where root bowls and hidden clefts grow thick with clumps of glowing fungus and writhe with scuttling spiders. They want the mountains to rise high and craggy, their passes to remain untamed and monster-haunted. The Gloomspite. Those races that worship Gorkamorka typically channel his primal energies in one fashion or another. Not only does this serve to energize the hordes of destruction, but it also causes weird supernatural manifestations to spring into being around them. Orooks, for example, feel the energies of what they call the Wa within them when it comes time to march to war. This force gathers wherever the larger greenskins become belligerent and excitable, and serves to render them even more aggressive until crackling green lightning forks through the air, and the landscape itself is driven into a frenzy of violence. Even the trees try to uproot themselves and join their charge, while rocks smash themselves apart against one another, and the Orooks' war cries echo for days on end before they finally dissipate. Grots are too puny to get a proper wah going. Their reedy little voices simply can't bellow loud enough, and their natural inclinations are more spiteful than boldly aggressive. Thus, their equivalent of this weird phenomenon is the Gloomspite, the urge to frenzied violence that grips them when the bad moon looms overhead. Grots seized by the Gloomspite feel their minds spinning with mean-spirited schemes and ambitions of teaching the surface Gits a lesson. Shadows crawl and churn around them like teeming insects, and strange fungi sprout spontaneously before spewing hallucinogenic spores. Froth leaks from the jaws of the worst affected grots, and their eyes glaze over as they gibber and shriek. In this state, the grot mobs mass into a horde before, at some unspoken signal, they pour upward like a green tide to begin the attack. Fangs of the Bad Moon. The Bad Moon is said to be made entirely of a strange substance known as Loonstone, also known on occasion as Mad Rock, Loony Rock, and Bad Stone. As it sails through the skies of the realms, the Bad Moon sporadically spits out meteoric shards of Loonstone that plummet to the ground with punishing force. Known as the Fangs of the Bad Moon, these Loonstone fragments range from little bigger than a stone shiv to rocky masses the size of a mountain, and have been known to completely obliterate fortresses and encampments that find themselves at the end of their streaking trajectories. Where these larger fangs embed themselves in the landscape, the Gloomspite Gitz are sure to appear sooner rather than later. Whether the Bad Moon somehow drops its fangs near to existing Gloomspite enclaves, or whether the grots flock to the fallen Loonstone is unclear. Either way, the diminutive greenskins pop up like mushrooms after rain, painstakingly carving the Loonstone outcroppings into loon shrines in the Bad Moon's honor. Loonstone is oddly lightweight, as though it were somehow porous, yet it is so hard that it requires incredible pressure to crush or carve. It is typically pale in coloration, bone-hued with a lambent, sickly yellow glow that is almost invisible in daylight, but which swells into a leprous radiance in the presence of treacherous or duplicitous thoughts. This phenomenon is known as lie light, and has led especially cautious Moonclan leaders to have amulets hewn laboriously from Loonstone to hang around their necks and warn them when enemies are plotting against them. Of course, such charms nearly always backfire. The bearer is forever thinking devious thoughts of their own, leading to their Loonstone pendants glowing constantly and driving them into the depths of frantic paranoia. Loonstone's most notable magical property, beyond acting as a lie detector, is that it soaks up natural arcane energies like a sponge. The background magics of the mortal realms gradually seep into Loonstone and imbue it with a thrumming charge that can be tapped by suitably cunning grot shamans. More pronounced still is the way Loonstone drinks in the Wa energies generated by warring Uruks, later to discharge them in seething explosions of violence, or, in extreme cases, just straightforward explosions. This has led especially daring Gloomspite leaders to use Loonstone to steal Wa power from nearby Uruks and unleash it amongst the Grot ranks, whipping their followers into a false Wa. The results of these experiments have ranged from waves of Wa-crazed lunatics overrunning their foes, to spectacular Loonstone detonations, or even just the budding thieves being throttled by a grumpy weird knob for their temerity. And that is where we're going to stop this particular video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. These guys are pretty fun. I like what they've carried over from Night Goblins. Obviously there are some like one-to-one direct swaps. These Loonstone fragments are pretty obviously replacements for the magic mushrooms that the Night Goblin shamans can eat to give them the extra, I think it's D6, it might be D3, I can't remember, to their casting attempts, but they're fun, I like it. Anyways, if you guys did enjoy the video, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.